Florida. Donald Trump sits alone in his private quarters, phone in hand, watching South Korean markets open 14 hours ahead of Washington. The KOSPI is climbing fast. Too fast. Seoul's National Assembly still hasn't approved the $350 billion deal they shook hands on 6 months ago. His advisors are asleep. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick won't see his phone for another 5 hours. But Trump doesn't wait. At 2:37 a.m., he opens Truth Social. 10 words. South Korea's legislature is not living up to its deal. The threat hits Seoul at 4:37 p.m. local time. Tariffs raised from 15% to 25%. Market chaos, emergency meetings. But here's what nobody noticed. 9,000 miles away in New Delhi, as Korean markets absorbed the shock, two other leaders were finalizing something that would make Trump's morning infinitely worse. What happened in the next 36 hours will be studied for the next 50 years as the moment America's allies stopped asking for permission. This is how the post-World War II trade order fractured in less than 2 days. Let's go. Hit subscribe right now, because what you're about to see isn't in any mainstream outlet. They're calling this a trade dispute. We're going to show you the coordinated strike. Drop a like if that 2:37 a.m. timestamp already has your radar up. I'm going to walk you through the exact sequence of events, the money that moved, the deals that were signed while America was watching the wrong chessboard, and why 3 separate powers just executed a flanking maneuver that took 18 months to set up. Comment below. Do you think this was about tariffs or something much bigger? We're just getting started. Let me lay out exactly what happened minute by minute. Sunday, January 25th, 2026. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent appears on ABC News. He says something remarkable. We have put 25% tariffs on India for buying Russian oil. Guess what happened last week? The Europeans signed a trade deal with India. Notice that. Guess what happened? That's not analysis. That's warning. The Treasury Secretary is on national television trying to signal something. He knows what's coming. 48 hours pass. January 27th, 2:37 a.m. Eastern Time. Trump posts the threat to South Korea. Raise tariffs from 15% to 25% if Seoul doesn't ratify the $350 billion agreement. 4:37 p.m. Seoul time. The KOSPI drops 0.84% in 15 minutes. Emergency cabinet meeting. Trade Minister Yo Hang-Eku and Industry Minister Kim Jong-kwon dispatched to Washington. But here's where it gets interesting. While South Korea scrambles, something else is happening. In New Delhi, Ursula von der Leyen and Narendra Modi are putting final signatures on documents. 36 hours after Trump's threat, they announced the mother of all deals, a free trade agreement creating a 2 billion person economic zone, combined GDP $27 trillion. That's 25% of humanity. 25% of global economic output. The India-EU trade talks started in 2007, stalled in 2013, relaunched in 2022. But in the 36 hours after Trump threatened South Korea, they finalized everything. That's not diplomacy. That's panic acceleration. Bloomberg buried the Korea story on page 6. The India-EU deal got modest coverage. India's car tariffs dropped from 110% to 10%. Trade wonk stuff. But when you look at WHO benefits from both events happening simultaneously, when you track where the money flows, and when you see what else got signed on January 26th that Western media completely missed, that's when you realize what this actually is. This isn't 2 separate stories. This is one coordinated strike. Pause. Drop a comment right now. Do you think it's a coincidence that the EU-India deal was announced 36 hours after Trump's Korea threat? Smash that like button if you're starting to connect the dots, because what I'm about to show you is the document that got signed on January 27th, one day before all of this, buried on page 12 of the Financial Times. Russia, India, $60 billion, 25 years. Most people will never hear about that deal, but you're not most people, so let's go deeper. Here's the official story. Trump's position. South Korea promised $350 billion, $200 billion in direct payments over 10 years, $150 billion in shipbuilding. We defended you for 70 years, 28,500 troops on your border. Pay up. Von der Leyen's position. The India deal creates opportunities, strengthens rules-based cooperation. Standard diplomatic language. Nothing to see here. But here's what they're not telling you. South Korea's $350 billion commitment equals 11% of their entire GDP. The Marshall Plan cost $150 billion in today's dollars. Korea is paying more than double the Marshall Plan just to avoid tariffs. Now watch what happened to Korean markets. After Trump's 2:37 a.m. threat, the Kospi drops 0.84%, standard panic. But then something weird happens. By market close, the Kospi is up 2.73%, closes at 5,084.85, an all-time high. Trump threatens massive tariffs. Korean stocks surge to a record. That's $43 billion in market cap swinging in one session. What does that tell you? Markets are betting against Trump's leverage. Global capital thinks Korea called his bluff. Now, the India-EU timing. Trump has been threatening Europe for weeks. January 20th, he issued ultimatums about Greenland. Europe knows Trump invaded Venezuela on January 3rd. They know he's serious about force. The India-EU deal is the hedge. Brussels telling Washington, we have options. We can build a $27 trillion trading bloc without your approval. On January 25th, Beeson goes on TV warning about this. Trump posts the Korea threat 48 hours later anyway. The EU responds by finalizing India even faster. See the sequence? Greenland threat, Europe panics, accelerates India, Trump hits Korea, Europe finalizes India to show they're serious. This is called a flanking maneuver, and it worked. Now let me show you the third layer, the one nobody's talking about, Russia. On January 26th, one day before Trump's Korea threat, Russia and India signed a 25-year natural gas deal, $60 billion, buried on page 12 of the Financial Times, zero coverage elsewhere. Russia sells gas to India at 40% below European prices. Why? Sanctions. Russia can't sell to Europe, so they discount to India. India refines Russian crude, sells refined products to Europe. Europe gets Russian energy laundered through Indian refineries. Technically, no sanctions violation. The U.S. imposed 25% tariffs on India for buying Russian oil. Modi's response? Sign a mega deal with Europe that increases this arbitrage flow. Now watch the loop. Russia needs customers. India needs cheap energy. Europe needs energy that's not directly Russian. All three win. The U.S. tried to isolate Russia. Instead, America created a $60 billion annual arbitrage system that completely bypasses U.S. control. And the EU-India deal includes a security partnership. India buys 60% of weapons from Russia, $82 billion market. The EU just gave itself access. While Trump fights over percentages, three powers just built a structure that functions without dollars, without U.S. approval, generating $60 billion annually that Washington can't touch. The Americans thought sanctions would isolate Russia. Instead, they created a Russia-India-Europe triangle that excludes the United States completely. Okay, real talk. If you just realized that a routine trade deal is actually economic warfare by other means, hit that like button right now. We just watched Europe and India build a $27 trillion trading bloc in 36 hours, while the Treasury Secretary was trying to warn Trump on national television, and Trump did it anyway. Comment, how long do you think American leverage survives this? Now let me show you who actually wins and loses. Let's start with the obvious, China. While America fights with allies, Beijing is watching. Not intervening, just watching the Western alliance tear itself apart. What China gained without doing anything, South Korea's #1 export destination is China. They just increased semiconductor imports from Korea by 12% in Q4 2025. While Trump threatens Seoul, Korea quietly increases shipments to Beijing. China controls 70% of global rare earth mining and 90% of processing. In December 2025, they quietly increased export restrictions by 15%. Nobody noticed because everyone watched Trump's tariff show. The India-EU deal creates a massive non-dollar trading zone. India trades with Europe in euros and rupees. That reduces dollar demand, exactly what China wants for yuan internationalization. Yuan-denominated trade grew 18% in 2025. BRICS expanded from 5 to 11 countries, with 13 more applying. Combined GDP, $28.5 trillion, larger than the U.S. economy. China's playing a 10-year game. America's playing a 10-day game. Now, who got wrecked? The United States. What America lost in 36 hours, the automatic assumption that allies need U.S. approval for major trade deals, the ability to use tariffs without consequences, the perception that dollar alternatives are theoretical. Here's the cascade. Countries bypass the dollar. They don't need dollar reserves. They sell treasuries. Prices drop. U.S. borrowing costs rise. The $36 trillion debt becomes more expensive. Dollar is 58% of global reserves, down from 71% in 1999. At current decline, by 2030, below 50%. That's the tipping point. U.S. sanctions work because they cut you off from dollar systems. But if you're not in the dollar system, sanctions become suggestions. Russia increased trade with China by 35% after sanctions. Iran sells oil in yuan. Venezuela pays China in crude. The sanctions weapon is dulling in real time. But here's who you didn't expect to win: India. Modi is running the perfect hedge, buying Russian oil at discounts, refining it, selling to Europe at premiums, taking U.S. military aid while buying Russian weapons, signing mega deals with Europe while maintaining BRICS ties. India's foreign reserves grew $58 billion in 2025, fastest since 2007. FDI up $78 billion. Manufacturing shifting from China up 23%. Modi signed 4 major trade deals in 2025 alone. India's playing both sides and it's working. And who's getting crushed? South Korea. Seoul is trapped. They need U.S. military protection against North Korea, but their economy depends on China. 25% of exports go to Beijing. After Trump's threat, Korean stocks hit an all-time high. Markets betting against Trump's leverage. President Lee can't convince his legislature the threat is real when markets are celebrating. Korea is trying to play the middle, but the middle is disappearing. Here's the pattern you need to understand. 1971, Nixon closed the gold window without warning allies. Bretton Woods collapsed. Europe's response eventually became the euro. 2003, Bush invaded Iraq over European objections. Transatlantic relationship fractured. 2017-2020, Trump's first term, pulled out of Iran deal. Paris Accord threatened NATO. Europe started building strategic autonomy frameworks. 2026, Venezuela invasion January 3rd. Greenland threats January 20th. Korea escalation. January 27th, EU-India response same day. Each iteration happens faster. Each rupture goes deeper. The numbers: dollars reserve share 2071%, 2026 58%, 13 points lost in 26 years. Wins trade settlement share 2015 2%, 2026 7%. If that continues, by 2035 20%. U.S. tariff average 2020 2.5%, 2026 13.2%, highest since 1934, Great Depression era. These trend lines converge on 2028-2030. That's when the system tips. 3 scenarios. Scenario 1, slow decline, probability 45%. The pound took 30 years to go from reserve currency to regional. Dollar follows same path. By 2035, important but not dominant. Your $100,000 savings buys 30% less. Scenario 2, sudden rupture, probability 30%. Like Nixon closing the gold window over a weekend. Triggers: Saudi announcing yuan oil sales, China dumping treasuries, major war. Timeline: 3 to 18 months. Your retirement loses 40% purchasing power. Scenario 3, managed transition, probability 25%. Major powers negotiate controlled transition, requires cooperation when everyone's fighting, least likely. Current trajectory: Scenario 1 with risk of triggering Scenario 2. What this means for you if dollar loses reserve status, inflation spikes. When pound lost status, Britain saw 24% inflation. Your $5 milk becomes $6.20. Your $2,000 monthly expenses become $2,480. Interest rates: U.S. borrows at 4.5% because everyone needs dollars. Without that, rates go to 7-8%. Your mortgage at 4.5%, $2,500 a month. At 7.5%, $3,500 a month, $12,000 more per year. The bitter irony: policies meant to preserve dominance are accelerating its loss. Tariffs push countries to trade with China. Sanctions force alternatives. Aggressive rhetoric makes allies hedge. Self-fulfilling prophecy: the more desperate the empire acts, the faster it falls. What happens next? January 29th or 30th. South Korea's National Assembly debate. Opposition controls parliament. They said they'll pass by end of February. Trump's threat didn't accelerate anything, might have delayed it out of nationalist pride. If Trump implements 25% tariffs before February ends, Korea's legislature might reject entirely out of spite. February 2026, G7 finance ministers in France. If it ends with coordinated China statements, one path. If vague language and separate deals, G7 coordination is breaking down. By April, South Korea either ratifies under pressure or finds face-saving delay. Most likely ratify with conditionality clauses giving Seoul an exit ramp. By June, India-EU agreement 40% through legal vetting. European Parliament debates begin. If passes easily, European unity against Trump. If struggles, Trump can still divide Europe. A new equilibrium is forming, two-track system. Track 1, U.S.-dominated security architecture, NATO, AUKUS, Quad. Track 2, non-U.S. economic architecture, EU, India, ASEAN, BRICS convergence. Countries in Track 1 for military protection, Track 2 for economic stability. That's not an alliance. That's a protection racket wildcards that could change everything. China invades Taiwan 2027. Probability 20-25%. Everything changes. Trade deals become meaningless. War economy. European far right wins major elections 2026. Probability 35-40%. If Le Pen wins France or AfD gains Germany, EU strategy collapses. India deal might not get ratified. Supreme Court rules Trump's tariffs unconstitutional. Probability 15 to 20%. Case pending on IEP authority. If court says no, Trump's leverage collapses overnight. BRICS announces functional SWIFT alternative. Probability 30-35%. If working by mid-2026, financial architecture supporting tariff leverage disappears. Sanctions become unenforceable. Let me bring this together. We started with a 2:37 a.m. social media post. What looked like a tariff threat is actually the moment American allies stopped asking permission. This is part of a 15-year pattern of declining U.S. economic leverage. We're approximately 60% through this transition. The breaking point comes when dollar drops below 50% of reserves or when oil is priced in multiple currencies as standard. Current trajectory 2028-2030. Your life changes when inflation spikes, interest rates rise, purchasing power drops 20 to 30%. The empire doesn't fall in a day. It falls in 1,000 cuts over a decade. We just watched cut number 4. South Korea's stock market hit an all-time high after his threat. Markets are betting against his leverage. That's not opinion, that's math. And math doesn't care about politics or patriotism. All right, if this changed how you see Trump's trade war, hit that subscribe button right now. We just watched America's allies build a $27 trillion trading bloc in 36 hours while Trump was threatening them. That's not deal making, that's blowback. Drop a comment. Which scenario, slow decline, sudden rupture, or managed transition? Does South Korea ratify by February? Who benefits most, China, India, or Europe? Share this with someone who still thinks tariffs are making America great again. Here's what we're tracking next. Korea's National Assembly debate. G7 finance ministers in February. Whether Trump backs down or doubles down. Some of you asked about the Russia-India deal. That $60 billion, 25-year contract is the real story. Let me know if you want that deep dive. Remember, this isn't partisan. This is about understanding how power actually works. The dollar isn't American because America is special. It's American because of decisions made in 1944, maintained through petrodollar agreements in 1974, enforced through military presence. Those decisions are being unmade right now, not by vote, by market forces, strategic positioning, accumulated leverage. You can't stop it by believing harder in American exceptionalism. You can only prepare. And preparation starts with information. Subscribe if you want to see clearly. This is the Geopolitical Edge. This is how the game is actually played. And now you know. Bonus detail if you're still here. Japan's stock market rose 1.2% the day Trump threatened South Korea. If Korean cars face 25% tariffs, Japanese cars become more competitive. Toyota is celebrating Hyundai's punishment. Japan is the silent winner nobody's discussing. Chew on that. See you in the next one.